Alright, let me just make sure. That looks about right. Good. I should turn off this heater.
Heater?
My feet are cold, Ben, okay? And I'm right next to where the AC just blows all the air. I want to hear your sass.
Why don't you just wear socks?
Because I'm a man. So this episode of Words About Books is brought to you by our beloved Patreons. Patrons, Patreonies, I don't know what you call them anymore. But if you want to get in on that, go to patreon.com/WABpod. And this week, I'm Nate, that's Ben, whatever, who cares. With this week, we are covering The Cabin at the End of the Train, a story about pursuing dreams. It's about the finding purpose in life and the importance of perspectives and just a lot of wholesome lessons about stuff. It's really good. So, how's it going, Ben?
So I've never heard of the Train at the End of the World by Michael Russian.
Well, that's why it's
name.
The Cabin at the End of the Train. You silly.
Oh. Well, no, that's not what we're reading. We're reading another Paul Tremblay book. You remember Paul Tremblay?
Oh, yeah, he was that
Head
guy.
Full of Ghosts. Yeah. And our patrons, I don't know if we guided them towards this in any way, shape, or form, but they have great marketing sense because the book we're reading by Paul Tremblay is called The Cabin at the End of the World. And it is also recently a major motion picture.
Oh my god. Dave Bautista?
Directed by M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh. Oh yeah. I remember seeing the trailers and being like, oh, this looks really interesting. And then I saw directed by M. Night Shyamalan. I went, well, I guess I'm not seeing that.
Yep, you can just throw that in the garbage.
Well, we all tried. We gave it a shot.
He's from Pennsylvania.
I'm surprised that they're still giving him work.
I don't know. So you know this we're both fans of Red Letter Media. We've mentioned them on the show many times.
Yeah,
they
Rich
seem
Evans.
They seem to like recent.
They seem to like recent Shyamalan.
M. Night Shyamalan, yeah. Because I haven't seen the film, but I did see the half in the bag on the film. They didn't think it was terrible, so maybe it's not terrible. But I have a problem where I don't even like the good M. Night Shyamalan movies. I didn't like Sixth Sense.
You didn't like Unbreakable.
Didn't watch it.
You didn't like The Lady in the Water, right? Where the smartest writer on the planet is going to save the world, and it's played by M. Night Shyamalan.
Didn't watch it. I've seen...
Did you see The Happening?
I've seen The Happening.
You saw The Happening.
Because my wife made me see The Happening.
Because they're outrunning the air.
That's what I came to understand, yes.
They're running away from the air.
And he would never try to kill that old woman. I remember that. You know, I went on a rant about Matt Damon on a previous episode of Words About Books.
Poor Matt Damon.
I just want to say everything I said about Matt Damon times 1,000 for Mark Wahlberg.
You don't like Mark Wahlberg? You know,
I understand he's attractive, way I understand. Oh yeah, I was gonna say the way I understand the Earth orbits the sun. That's a fact that science has told me.
Wahlberg looked like a guy who had been in many street fights, and all the assailants punched him directly in the face. I did not think he was a super attractive man.
I don't know. I mean, he
gets, Matt Damon. I can understand
treatment. Okay, it's just he looks like Matt Damon but worse.
Okay, there we go. Perfect. Matt Damon, but again, if he got in some street fights and took a few too many blows to the face. And then he didn't properly recover from that, and he slept directly on his face, so his face just healed in the wrong way.
But I'll tell you one thing about Matt Damon. Matt Damon has certain roles where they work for him, you know? There's a certain kind of, acting that Matt Damon is good at. He's not a very well-rounded actor, in my opinion.
Being a guy from Boston or from New England?
I think he plays a good, like, slightly more athletic everyman. Whereas Mark Wahlberg is just a bad actor.
He's got some roles. Okay.
No, he
hey,
doesn't.
There was a movie where he murdered Matt Damon.
Okay.
That was at
Was
the
he
end
good?
of The Departed. Yeah, The Departed was awesome. Mark Wahlberg, though, was not a main character of that by any stretch of the imagination. So
I don't like Mark Wahlberg at all. So
I can't think of a lot of things I liked him in, but he's always like the asshole.
You can cut the entire Mark Wahlberg discussion because he's not even in the movie adaptation of the book we're talking about, so it doesn't matter.
It matters to me.
It doesn't matter.
It matters to James.
It matters to James, our patron, who probably voted for this. So
probably I learned how to download who voted for what, so I mean I can find out.
Oh, that's horrifying.
Yeah,
it should be anonymous. It should be anonymous.
Yeah, it should.
You should,
be.
in fact, stop being able to contact specific patrons to try to campaign for them to vote for certain books that you know I won't like. I think that would be
It's called campaigning, and you should try it.
It sounds like this one's on you. I mean,
oh yeah, it's on me for not being more politically active.
Yes.
So, Paul Tremblay, author of a book on this podcast about books. We read Head Full of Ghosts in season 1. We did not know who Paul Tremblay was. We pulled him randomly off of a list, and we read it. We quite liked it. He was a relatively new author at the time. He has since written a few more books. One of them is Cabin at the End of the World. I believe it is his first one to get any kind of like major adaptation. So fortunately, our patrons picked that at a time when it was popular, so the algorithm will favor us, and perhaps we can acquire more patrons, so we can acquire more books.
Perfect. The system works.
The system works. Trust the system.
Yeah. That is the theme of this story. You just trust the system and everything will be okay, right?
So I'm going to give you the back of the book, right?
Oh, okay.
Or do you want to go in a different direction?
No, why not give the back of the book, Ben?
Okay, back of the book. There is a couple. They are a gay couple.
Whoa, hold on. What? When did this happen? I wasn't picking up on that at all, Ben.
We'll talk about that. I do mention they're a gay couple for a specific reason. It's an important part of the book. Andrew and Eric, they have adopted a daughter named Wen. She is from China. I think they adopted her from an agency in Hong Kong. This is background that's given throughout the book. They're on vacation at a remote cabin in the woods adjacent to a lake. And one day, a group of 4 strangers comes to the cabin and they demand that the family make a choice. They must sacrifice one of themselves to save the world. What will they do?
The end. Well, this has been Words About Books. A little shorter episode than normal.
You make that joke every time I do the back of the book, and I don't think you know what the back of the book means. Like, it doesn't usually go the entire story to the end, you know? So I'm just telling you what it's about.
That's what the back of the book does, Ben.
Yeah. So I'm just telling you what it's about. So it seemed like an interesting premise.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, you notice that when the 4 individuals show up, they are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. They're wearing they're really only the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse in the sense that they share a color scheme. There's a red one, a white one, a pale one, and a black one. And that's the color of their shirts.
Oh, well, I don't know why you would talk about the color of their shirts then, Ben. That seems like it doesn't have any sort of relevance at all.
It's barely relevant. There is four horsemen imagery. I don't really understand. It doesn't really go much deeper than that. I thought.
Yeah, they really should have dressed up as Rick, Arn, Tully, and I'm thinking you could. I guess you could do Oli, but I think Luger or Wyndham would probably be the better pick. Yeah, go with Wyndham.
Are these wrestlers?
Yeah, Ben. Come on.
There's a wrestler named Wyndham.
Barry Wyndham? Yeah.
He sounds like he should be playing lacrosse.
Yeah, he should. But instead, he beats people up in fake fights for our amusement in the 1980s when he was doing that.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
So anyway,
one of those was Ric Flair, Ben.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Wow.
The Four Horsemen were a big deal, Ben.
Oh, they were wrestlers. There were wrestlers called the Four Horsemen.
Yeah, that's why it's relevant. Come on. Yeah. That would have been way like I would let those guys in, right?
Well, I guess one of them's played by Dave Bautista, so there's a wrestling connection.
And Dave Bautista was in Evolution, which had Ric Flair in it, and Evolution was a modern day Four Horsemen adaptation. It all makes sense.
Do you just want me to call Jamie and you can do this with him instead? Like, do I need to be here?
Yes. Yes, you do. The patrons paid for this, Ben.
Well, I think okay, so let's get this out of the way up front. The book is disappointing.
Say it ain't so, Ben. Although after you kind of spoiled what was going to happen, I did have to slog through the remaining like 50% of the book.
Would you have felt better? Would you have felt better if I hadn't spoiled it for you?
No, because then the ending would have really let me down.
So, okay, the book...
And there comes a time when the tension just can't live anymore because of how it's just dragging on and on.
Yeah, so right off the bat when we picked this book, we were excited about it because we really did like Head Full of Ghosts. Got a lot of interesting conversation out of it, and I think we'll get some interesting conversation out of this one too. But you go on Goodreads, and Goodreads is famously what I would consider generous. Talked about it before. I don't think people tend to review books that they don't read, and I don't think they tend to read books that they aren't predisposed to like. So that creates an environment where almost every book is above 3 out of 5 stars. This one is real close to 3 stars.
Oh my god. Say
which
it ain't
means
so, Ben.
A lot of people read it and didn't like it, which again is rare.
It got ratioed. Is that what the kids are saying these days, dog?
That's not quite what a ratio
means. You got ratioed. You got more dislikes than likes, bro. Bleh.
Trying to decide how I want to jump into talking about it because a lot of the specifics aren't that important. That's kind of the thing. So Paul Tremblay has this way of writing where he creates these memorable scenes, and I think his prose is very good, and so he writes well. Like, everything is very well drawn. It just doesn't move the plot along very fast. And the whole premise of these agents of the apocalypse arrive and they ask you to choose to sacrifice one of your family members. That's the promise, right? That is what you would expect if you looked at this book or if you saw this movie trailer and you sat down to consume it. You would be like, okay.
I'm going to be honest. I thought there would be more trying to keep them out of the house than there was. I expected like the first third of the book to be like tension of them trying to find a way in while pleading with them that they're running out of time, and the family has to desperately try to keep them out. But no, the four guys get into the cabin like almost immediately.
Well, I was going to say, I didn't think that, because how would they be able to keep them out? It's a rickety old cabin.
Yeah. You gotta be
2
creative.
on 4.
Hey,
You had no
3
time
on
to
4.
prepare.
You've got a little girl in there.
Yeah, you've got a 6-year-old girl.
Hey, she's 7. She's almost
more
8.
More of a hindrance than a help, I think, when it comes to defense.
She can go for the knees. I
don't even think she could. I don't even think she could, because literally, like, one of the guys is described as Dave Bautista.
Yeah, I immediately knew who Dave Bautista was going to be playing.
Yeah, one of the guys.
This guy is fucking gigantic.
So the Four Horsemen, I guess we can introduce them a little bit.
Yeah,
they are
Adrienne and Redmond and Sabrina. Is that her name? And then Leonard.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, got it. Leonard's a big, bulky guy who seems all innocent and shit, and he's the one who you first meet. He meets the little girl and is like, "You gotta let us in when..." That's her name. "Gotta let us in so that we can save the world." And then you've got Redmond, who's an asshole, and you've got Adrienne, who she's a girl, and then you've got Sabrina, who's a nurse. So I think I just described their personalities.
Yeah, that's about as good as it gets. The only thing I'd say about Redmond is he's kind of a redneck. He's kind of an asshole.
He's a wannabe redneck, according to one of them.
Yeah, I don't like Andrew and Eric. Let's talk about Andrew and Eric, too.
Yeah, I don't either.
So Andrew and Eric, are they both college professors? I know Andrew is.
Andrew definitely is. Eric...
Is he like a banker or something? I can't remember. But
he's a wealthier, like, douche. Like, just a big old douche. I imagine he's the kind who would wear, like, a sweater vest and then, like, a coat with, like, the pads on the elbows, like, everywhere he goes, regardless of the weather or function.
So they both have this kind of air of, like, they're from the city, they're wealthy.
Yeah.
They're very, very science-minded. They talk about how much, like, the one guy loves, like, quoting statistics and studies to people. And, like, that's not as charming or as relatable as people who do that seem to think it is. Like, sometimes people just want to have a conversation. Sometimes they're not really looking to do science with you at dinner.
But they should get on my level, am I right?
There's a certain amount of it. Like, I'm not anti-science. I'm just like...
Keep it in your pants.
If I would like to be able to tell a story about something that happened to me in my life and my subjective experience of it without you telling me that my subjective experience doesn't matter. Because
wrong. It's so low.
Yeah,
the odds of what you just described is almost zero. How did it happen? You're lying to me.
Like, I understand that my subjective experience is not the same as a double-blind clinical trial. I understand that. I would just like to be able to say that my experience with snorting a line of Flintstones chewable vitamins was that it was awesome.
But Ben, why are there 3 different strawberry flavors? How about that?
And that's what I found myself wondering, but we never got that far because he spent the whole time telling me how statistically most vitamins your body can't even absorb and you just wind up pooping them out. And so now it's just like, oh, okay, vitamins are ruined. I guess I can't have anything nice in this world anymore. That's what Andrew reminds me of. He reminds me of the guy who took away your Flintstones chewable vitamins because they were not actually providing the protection you thought they were. So It's a mild complaint in the grand scheme of things.
No, he just never came off as likable.
And Eric, I guess the reason I don't know what Eric's profession or personality
Time for
is
the sound effect.
is because Eric, in the initial bout of the people trying to break into the cabin, Eric runs across a floor, trips, smacks his head, and he's basically just delirious the rest of the book.
Is that what happens?
I don't remember exactly
I
how he
thought
bashed
Andrew
his head.
was stopped, and then one of them hit him in a way where they bashed. I don't know. It doesn't really matter.
He bashed his own head off the floor.
He bashes his head on the floor so hard he suffers a severe concussion and splits the back of his head open.
Mm-hmm.
And then he spends the rest of the book being concussed to shit and seeing things that maybe they're there, maybe they're not there. Or
Yeah, maybe they're a traumatic brain injury.
Yeah. Maybe it's God or maybe it's a TBI. Who knows?
And that's kind of the whole book. Now, so Paul Tremblay has a bit of a theme cooking here. And that theme to me is...
Don't go to a cabin in the middle of the nowhere without some sort of cell reception or like a satellite phone.
The theme to me is, I don't like God. In Head Full of Ghosts, the question was, is it mental illness or is it a possession? And the odds were stacked so heavily in favor of it's mental illness. It's obviously mental illness. The delusion that it might be a possession led to the exploitation of a child, and the church and everybody who believed in the church argument was a fool.
And the family, got ruined.
Yeah. And in this one, I would say it's actually more, in my opinion, I'm interested to hear your opinion. It's more stacked in favor of something's going on. Like something supernatural may be going on.
Overwhelmingly stacked in favor of the something supernatural is going on.
Okay, I'm glad you thought that. But at the same time, I'm torn here because the only reason I, as a reader, think that something supernatural is going on is because I am aware that I am reading a horror novel, and I am aware that the four horsemen are telling at least what they believe to be the truth because I get chapters from their perspective. But if I were the family, I would never believe a goddamn word they say because they are taken to this cabin. Like these people are trapped in this cabin in the woods, and they are shown signs of the coming apocalypse that are so weak. I thought the book was going to be this like Binding of Isaac situation where, there is a miracle child that they didn't think they would be able to get. Like I thought, they didn't think they were going to be able to adopt. And then when they finally get her and it's their miracle baby and she means everything to them, and somebody's going to ask them to sacrifice her like God did to Abraham. And do you do it? And they were going to be shown increasingly convincing evidence that if they did not sacrifice when, the entire world was going to be destroyed and all that blood would be on their hands. That's not what happens.
Yeah, it sounds like they need a little bit of Jesus, you know what I mean?
I thought it was going to take more inspiration from the Bible side of things.
Yeah, from the Old Testament.
Yeah.
I thought we got rid of the Old Testament when Jesus came around. He was like,
that's not what happened.
We're not going to flood the earth anymore, guys. We're not going to ask you to like eat your babies or whatever it is just because God wanted to test your loyalty or whatever. Actually, it turns out that doing that kind of made people like God less. So we took your suggestions, and why are you nailing me to this cross? Oh, God. Ow.
Well, I disagree with you on a lot of that. But Also, I disagree that it was like, I thought, because right off the bat you get this four horsemen imagery. The book of Revelations is, of course, in the New Testament. So I
Yeah,
thought they
but
were
that
going to
was
draw.
agreed upon at like wasn't that agreed upon in the fucking council?
Well,
On
every
like,
book of the Bible was decided in the council, the Nicene
hey,
Council.
I did get the name right. Sweet. Yeah, well, bad idea. You take that out.
It needed an end. Like,
It needed an end.
I honestly, like, you got to imagine like that came up, right? Like when they're trying to decide like which order the books of the Bible should go in, and they're like, okay, so we've got all of Paul's letters, and then like, I don't know, like Revelations. It's like, who wrote it? And it's like John. Like, oh, John the Apostle? No, John the guy that lives on the island with all the mushrooms on it. And it's like, but it's a solid end. There's a lot of really cool shit going on. It adds a lot of lore right at the end. It really makes you want to keep going. Because it's like, we got Jesus, and that's great. Like he's cool, and everybody likes him, and he's a real hero. And that's like the carrot, right? But what if there was a stick? That's Revelations. All the horrible stuff.
I feel like the stick is the Old Testament.
No. The stick is the dragon rising in the east, the 7-headed dragon rising in the east. And then Jesus comes down with a fucking sword that's on fire, a literal lightsaber. And he just starts fighting Satan. And then he casts him back into the pit. And it's like, rah, rah, rah. And then, like, I imagine, like, I'm the guy in the council going, like making sword motions and, like, and they're like, well, I mean, he's simple and he likes it. I bet that'd convince a lot of people. So that's what I thought was going to
It's convincing me. That sounds awesome.
It does sound awesome.
Can Hollywood make that movie? Just like 90 minutes of Jesus with a lightsaber fighting Satan, and like there's a dragon and
I don't know if Hollywood can. Mel Gibson make that movie?
The Passion of the Christ 2.
The Revenge.
The Revenge of Jesus.
Oh, I'd watch it.
I'd watch it too.
Okay, so
right.
This time he's pissed. But I thought they were going to draw more from the Bible. I thought it was going to be like this choice. But instead, what happens is they get to the cabin, right? These four horsemen. They're like, the first, I want to say 60% of the book, if it is a laugh track and a bass line away from being an episode of Seinfeld, where Jerry, George, Elaine, and Kramer have to convince a family to murder one of their number.
I watched that episode.
Because they're so bad at it. It's so bumbling and incompetent. They go to the cabin and they're like, hey, you got to let us in. And they're like, we're obviously not going to let you in. And there's this whole thing. He's like, we don't want to hurt you, but we...
Don't forget the fact they're carrying, like, makeshift weapons.
They are carrying Mad Max style, like, desert apocalypse
They're like,
stabs of murder.
We're going to glue a sledgehammer to, like, a spade.
And I love, and like, this is again where the laugh track comes in. Like, you imagine Redmond, because he's racist, so he's Kramer. So he goes into this thing, like, he goes into this fugue state. He goes into this fugue state, and he's like, yeah, so like, I just made these weapons, Jerry, and I don't even remember how I made them. And George comes in and he's like, they're beautiful. And
you're really selling me on this.
Yeah, no, and it's like, he what I love though is he's like, I was called by God to make these weapons, and I don't even remember making them. I went into a trance and I constructed these weapons. And then they describe the weapons on the page, and it sounds like what a literal crazy person would build out of a pile of scrap in their dilapidated trailer. And everybody's like, and they called to me. And it's like, guys, you're nuts.
You're really not selling me here. Yeah, you know how Jesus has like a flaming sword? He didn't have this. He didn't have like a board with nails in it attached to a sledgehammer, guys.
You also know how each of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse was assigned like an item.
And they all rode horses, and they all had like, a specific domain. Yeah.
Let's get it. They break into the cabin, right? And so Andrew
FBI,
and Eric,
open up!
Yeah, Andrew and Eric, also morons.
What?
They're
college-educated professors, sir.
Yes. But what are they professors of?
One of them is professors of, I think, religious studies. And Eric, I actually do not remember, and I was looking on Wikipedia, and Wikipedia doesn't tell me, so, I don't know.
He's a concussion professor.
He's a professor in worrying too much, and then,
Anytime Eric and Andrew get hurt, it's in an escape attempt. The 4 horsemen...
and Andrew was reading Gabriel Garcia Marquez or whatever his name is.
I noticed that.
Yeah,
I noticed that. Yeah.
Anyway, so
Nobel Prize-winning author featured on Words About Books. The author that made Nate quit his English major.
Yeah.
So Andrew and Eric, they have a Benny Hill chase, okay, around the cabin. And they go back and forth. They run across the camera, and one of them's chasing him with the staff, and then he's chasing them with the staff, and then it's just da-da-da-da-da-da. And then Eric wipes out, bashes his head off the ground, and he's just like...
And then Andrew busts out his boxing skills. He has the heart to be a world champion. He starts beating the shit out of Redmond.
Yeah.
And then he gets surrounded, and his daughter gets captured, and they're like, you should just stop now.
They're tied to chairs. Wen isn't. Wen's allowed to watch cartoons. And...
Yeah, Steven Universe.
Paul Tremblay needs you to know that he knows a child.
It was the episode where Peridot saves the moon, or whatever. I don't know. I was kind of hoping that somehow that would be thematically related, but it's not.
That's going to be a thing for me that keeps coming up, is like, I keep hoping it's thematically related, and it's not. And there's like so many tantalizing things that could be thematically related, but never quite get there. So they get tied to a chair, right? And now Jerry, Elaine, George, and Kramer are in a position to try to explain why they're here. And Jerry's like, okay, so you're not going to believe this, but I need one of you to kill the other, to save the world.
And they're like, awesome, let's do it. Give me one of those weapons, I'll just murder my husband in cold blood.
Yeah, they're like, obviously, we're not going to do that.
But random stranger guys, like, this is the world, man. If you don't do this, bad things will happen.
I don't care.
But would it help you care more if we started killing each other every time you said no?
Yes, you should do that.
Done! Redmond, put this mask on. We're gonna beat you to death in front of these lovely folks that we just met.
Yeah, and so then in a genuinely creepy scene, because Paul Tremblay is a very good writer, Redmond is ritualistically sacrificed in a brutal display of the tool's powers, and then they turn on the TV.
To Steven Universe.
No, they turn off Steven Universe.
This time... Oh, okay. I was going to say...
Turn off Steven Universe, and they turn it to the Weather Channel, where there was an earthquake in Alaska, and that caused some tsunami waves. But then there was a second earthquake, triggered by the first.
Oh
and
my
this
God.
earthquake devastates the west coast of the United States, specifically Oregon. The Goonies rock.
Time. Yeah. So after reading Ready Player One, any of these like little like, aha, here's some cultural stuff. It just makes me cringe. It just makes me cringe. It makes me respect you just a little less. We're just like, please stop.
I think that's your trauma. You're being a bit of an Andrew right now.
Yeah. Well, guess what? I'm gonna use my trauma as a weapon against everyone, Ben. You were part of that Ready Player One. You're a culture phobe, Ben. An anti-culture phobe. Whatever I am, you're the opposite of that, and you hate me.
I mean, maybe. Like, I'm not going to say you've said things that are less true. I think that might have been the premise of our podcast, actually.
So that's when the book ends, because Andrew's like, all right, I'm convinced. A random earthquake that was triggered by another earthquake. Give me that weapon. I'll murder my husband right now. I'll murder my husband and my kid. You know, let's do it. I'll take them both out. Will I double save the world if I take out two?
So first off, I thought when they sacrificed Redmond, I was like, okay, they're the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are supposed to bring certain thematic disasters, right? So like,
I figured he was war or conquest.
War.
Yeah.
War is the red one.
When he dies, there would just be a bunch of wars.
There would be war. It would be like unsealing war. And when you read Revelations, there are, a bunch of seals, and when the seals are broken, the things are unleashed. And so I thought that was going to happen. That doesn't happen. It has nothing to do with war. It's just there's an earthquake. But it's a bad earthquake. So like, okay.
Some might say a war quake. Yeah? Huh?
You buy that? Warquake?
Yeah. You guys ready to kill your family
what is
now?
What is an earthquake if not a war of tectonic plates?
There you go.
Think about that.
Perfect. Have we sold you yet? Are you ready to kill your family? What's the deal with that? Am I right, guys? Eh?
So that doesn't convince them. And
damn it, so close.
Then I can see where people accuse it of padding. So like,
oh my god.
So you think it's padded, right?
Oh my god. There's a point in the book, Ben, that I'm going to summarize like 30 pages, 30 to 50 pages probably. Maybe not that much, with just like the same sequence over and over again. I'll let you know when we get to that, but it definitely feels like you could cut a bit out.
So
you need to retread the same ground.
I read one review that I agreed with a lot of, but I disagreed with some of. And this guy had said that the entire first part with Wen talking to Leonard about the grasshoppers and everything, that went on just way too long. I disagreed.
I would disagree with that.
Because I thought that was very good at building tension.
I think the padding for me is the middle part. Not the beginning or the end a little bit, maybe.
So I thought some of these things that people have accused of padding, I think actually build tension quite well. I think if you had a daughter and you found her in the yard when you thought she was safe and playing alone, you find she's actually talking to this enormous hulking man.
Yeah, Dave Bautista, but not Dave Bautista.
And he is trying to tell her something. Like, he wants to talk to her before he talks to you. That's creepy. And, like, that whole scene was creepy, and it did build tension. And I think the whole description of Redmond's ritualistic sacrifice, that's creepy. That builds tension. You need to do that. And then you need to see how the horsemen react to it. Like, they didn't want to kill Redmond. They are being compelled to do this against their will. That they are unwilling agents of the divine. They don't really get a choice. They have to do this. Only the family gets a choice. So the way they react after killing Redmond is very important in establishing their credibility. They need to be as emotionally scarred by this as the family is. So we get to day 2. Day 2, we now know that one of the horsemen is going to be sacrificed if the family doesn't make the decision.
Yeah.
And that's going to be Adrian.
Yeah.
And she is
doesn't
no
wanna
longer as
die.
on board with this as
Yeah.
she once was.
She's like, hold on, I'm gonna make them talk using a little bit of torture. And then she pulls out a tape deck and she pushes play, and it's like, radioactive, radioactive. And she's like, are you ready to kill each other yet?
Yes, God, yes. Take me. Take me now. Please, please. If Adrian broke into my cabin, tied me to a chair, and forced me to listen to Imagine Dragons, I'm only slightly exaggerating. I actually would probably crack within 5 hours. I think I would actually beg for death within 5 hours. At that point, honest to God, it would be me or Adrian. I would hop my way into destroying that chair, possibly shattering my own neck. I don't care. What about the thunder one? Thunder?
I haven't even heard that one.
They're such a fucking ridiculous band.
I'm gonna listen to that later, Ben.
If you've ever attended an Imagine Dragons concert, like, are your parents proud?
Yeah, I'm a financier for a big bank.
That's probably who goes to those shows. Bankers. I bet Elon Musk was at one of those shows. He's a big Imagine Dragons fan. Can you imagine if Imagine Dragons and Nickelback just went on tour?
Oh, God.
The Imagine Nickelback Dragons tour.
There's your sign of the apocalypse. If I die, all bands are just gonna be that from now on.
You know why families have to make the sacrifice? Because if it was
Why is that?
podcasters, like the only fight would be like who could get the knife in faster. You just throw a knife between two podcast hosts and we're good to go. and this is the other problem too, because like the whole time I was reading this book, I was thinking like, man, if I had to go to this cabin, like first off, would I sacrifice myself to save the world? Maybe, honestly, maybe.
You brought up a good point though. I'm not sacrificing myself if the world is just gonna end in 50 years anyway. God's gotta sweeten the pot.
It's got to sweeten the pot. He's got to, God, if I sacrifice myself, you're fixing global warming. You're getting rid of billionaires. You're ending the war. You're getting Russia out of Ukraine. I got a few demands, you know. I'm not going to save the world for it to end in 50 years. Also, I don't like being told I need to do things.
Yeah, you tell me to wear a mask and I'm gonna spit on you and go to jail. Take that, lib.
A couple of weirdos come breaking into my house and tell me I got to sacrifice myself. Make me, you weirdos.
Yeah, that's when they bust out the Imagine Dragons.
But so Adrian, she's not allowed to torture them with Imagine Dragons. Jerry has to stop her from doing that.
Damn.
And because the horsemen aren't allowed to hurt them, but she's freaking out because she's going to die, right? And
I'm surprised any of them thought that they were walking away from this.
so you're wondering what's going to happen. Now, they start arguing, they start fighting. So if they don't make a decision and she doesn't submit herself to be killed...
Luckily, I've been slowly loosening these ropes for the past 100 pages, Ben.
And then if Adrian doesn't submit herself to be killed, then that would mean that there is no divine mandate here.
Yeah, why don't we tie you guys up so you can't kill yourselves or each other, and problem solved. Huh? Yeah? You can't go... What are you gonna do? Go into a fugue state and then fall over in your chair? Idiot.
No. This is about you. This is about you.
Oh,
You're not tricking
okay.
me with you. You're not tricking me with your words and logic, college boy. So, yeah, Andre gets loose. Andre, in a series of flashbacks,
Andrew. Who is Andre? What is wrong
Andre?
with
Why
you?
am I saying Andre?
I don't know. Why are you?
I think you got me talking
Because
about
it-
wrestlers.
Because
like
it sounds
Andre
a
the
little
Giant.
more douchey than Andrew, but just
Andrew.
a little bit.
Andrew, so he gets loose. In a series of flashbacks, it has been established that Andrew packs heat. He owns
Because
a
he got
gun.
his ass kicked in a bar by a homophobe, and he's pretty sure that homophobe was in fact Redmond.
Yeah, when we were talking about this, Eric he's like, I know who that is. It's I forget who he said. He's like, it's Johnny Fuckface, and everybody's like, who? And Andrew's like, Johnny Fuckface, the man who attempted murder me, and we were at his trial. I was a witness. I had crippling post-traumatic stress disorder for years. I took self-defense classes. I bought a gun because of him. And Eric's like, that's familiar. Yeah.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember that happening. Yeah.
I vaguely remember one of the single most traumatic things to ever happen in your life. Yep.
Yeah. And you can take that one of two ways, I guess. Either Eric doesn't give a shit, or Eric's brain is hemorrhaging blood.
Yeah, Eric's brain is scrambled eggs at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, Andrew's convinced it's the person who attacked him. There's these flashbacks. And Tremblay is trying to do this thing where I knew this would happen as soon as I picked up this book, because he needs to establish the family as characters to make this like proper literature. Because if this were just a horror movie or an exploitative horror book, it would all be about the violence, and it wouldn't be anything about the characters. They get like one or two sentences of backstory and that'd be it. But because this is literature, he must have this full thing where he experienced this hate crime and he recovered from it, but it changed him. It made him a little bit more paranoid. And so he has a gun. He brought the gun with him, but he left it in the car. Which does seem a weird thing to do.
Yeah, so if someone were to say, I don't know, break into the cabin, right? Like trying to get at his family, he would in fact not be able to defend himself. Meanwhile, my stepfather-in-law is leaving guns accidentally underneath pillows in his house, so...
there's a happy medium there. So I do know people who carry guns, and I know people who use them safely. But like, if you were going out into the woods, there are parts of America that are, vast wilderness. They're not really in one of them, but there are bears and stuff. And it is not unwise necessarily to carry a firearm for, non-murderous purposes.
I would want to carry a firearm if I were in a cabin in the middle of nowhere without any sort of cell reception or anyone who is around 4 miles.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unreasonable to want to have a gun, but his partner Eric does not want guns in the house. They have a young daughter, but the gun is in a safe. The gun is in a safe in the car. If he can get to the car, he can open the gun safe. And you know what's going to happen here. Like, he's got to open a gun.
Get the gun and save the day.
He's got to open a gun safe while he's being attacked.
Story.
He's barely going to have enough time to load the gun. He's not going to have enough bullets in the gun. He's going to try to shoot the gun. He's going to miss 5,000 times because somebody broke his knee. So you know that's going to happen.
Okay. I did know that was going to happen, actually. Yeah.
It's Chekhov's gun safe, If there is a gun safe, at some point you are going to have to struggle to unlock the gun safe. You're going to really need the gun. There's going to be moments between your death and unlocking the gun safe. And that's exactly what happens. He gets into the car, somebody's attacking him. But here's the other thing too. It's like, what are you going to do to me? Like, you can't kill me. If you kill me, I can't save the world. So, stalemate. I mean, the whole thing's stalemate. Like, I win by default. All I have to do is wait you out. And he goes to the gun. He gets the gun. He shoots a couple of times. But once he got the gun, I also knew that suddenly Adrian's not going to miss her deadline. Now, Adrian doesn't have to submit herself. She's going to die because Andrew is going to kill her.
Suicide by cop. Except he's a college professor.
And we won't know if it was a coincidence or if it was divine planning. And that's what happens. But then also, he shoots Wen.
Whoopsie. Oh.
Yeah, he's struggling. He's struggling with Dave
Bautista. Leonard.
Yeah, I've been calling him Jerry. He's been struggling with Leonard.
Big Jerry. Yeah.
Big Jerry, a.k.a. Leonard. And in the struggle, the gun goes off, blows Wen's face off.
Yeah, did you catch that theme where she was born with a horrible, horrible cleft palate that required multiple surgeries, and then she got her face blown open by a bullet? You see, it's like poetry. It rhymes, okay?
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme, every stanza kind of...
So in my mind, one of the problems I had with this decision, I don't mind that Wen died necessarily. Like,
she was the most likable of the three characters.
She was the most likable of the three characters because she was not a character.
Yeah,
I have a problem
she wasn't
with this
a college
scenario.
professor or a financier. She was just a kid.
She wasn't a college professor, a financier, or a religious lunatic. She was hands down, by default, the most likable person in the room. But I have a problem with this in a lot of media. I call it the kick the puppy moment.
Yeah, they should have had a puppy that would have accidentally died as well. That would have been...
Whenever you want to establish that you're not supposed to like somebody, you have them kick the puppy. Because what is a more asshole thing to do in this world than to kick a pure and innocent creature that is only capable of love and trust?
Yeah, Redmond should have kicked a puppy on the way in.
Yeah. And so Wen, she's the perfect daughter. I'm not even going to describe any of the things she does. You
She watches
conjure
Steven
up
Universe.
your image of the perfect daughter.
Done. I already have her. Got him.
I know you do.
Yeah.
That's Wen. She never fights with her parents. She never does anything wrong.
Yeah, because she's
She's
not a
not-
teenager yet. From what
That's exactly. Yeah.
From what I understand, after they're done being toddlers and before they become teenagers, they're pretty awesome. There's like this sweet spot in time where you're like, oh, things are going to be okay. And then they start like tattooing boys' faces on their face and like running around with nipple rings and shit. And you're like, ah! Whoa! You become Hank Hill. Whoa!
Okay. They start tattooing boys' faces on their faces. Yeah, that might be a different kind of situation. If your daughter tattoos a boy's face on her face, she might be a serial killer.
That's better than her dating bad men.
I'd legitimately rather she kill them. Oh no. Okay.
Yeah, if we're in a cabin, all right, it's me, my wife, my daughter, and her asshole boyfriend, and some religious lunatics are like, you gotta make a sacrifice. I'll be like, done. Come here, Jack.
Do you think like that's a thought that hadn't even occurred to me? Do you think that's a thought that would occur to you while you're in the cabin? It's like, oh man, I wish my mother-in-law was here. Could have gotten that sacrifice out of the way and been in the lake by now.
See if we can call her up. She's only like 3-hour drive away. Let's get her in here.
Yeah, she's family. It counts.
Yeah.
Check with God. I think we can make this work. Oh no. But yeah, so Wen dies. Wen wasn't much of a character to me. I was surprised that she died. It's more about what you know Andrew and Eric are going to feel. You feel...
Yeah, Andrew is going to feel rage, and Eric is going to feel a concussion that is distorting his view of reality.
Really fucking out of it, yeah.
He's like, why are there so many flies just coating her body? And Andrew's like,
There's no flies,
are you doing
buddy.
okay, man? There's no flies. It's like, they came in when the spiritual light creature was here. And it's like, maybe you take a nap now, buddy. But also, mission accomplished, right? We've made a sacrifice. We've sacrificed our daughter to save the world, right? So we're done.
And again, in a Seinfeld moment, these two guys. Yep, these two guys are like super upset. They have experienced the worst thing a parent could ever experience. This is, without a doubt, the worst probably their lives will ever be.
And then Eric is like, hey, Andrew, you want to go get some fuck puppets? And then they high five and off they go.
No, Christopher Moore had nothing to do with this.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, no, but Paul Tremblay did. And so at that moment, when they're both sitting there devastated, and Leonard is like, I contributed to the death of this child I promised to protect. I was sure that she was going to be the one person. I even said it, which in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have said it. Like, you're the one person who doesn't have to worry about dying here.
Yeah.
And then like, oh, she died. Like, I really jinxed that. That's my bad. I also may have squeezed his hand, which squeezed the trigger. So like, I kind of killed her and he kind of killed her. So we killed this child together. There's a lot of complicated emotions going on here. But Andrew, I'm going to need you to turn on the TV because I don't know if that one counts.
So let me then summarize the next 30 pages or so, right? Here it is. Andrew says, "Fuck you, you son of a bitch," and punches Leonard. And Leonard goes, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean. But you still have to make a choice." And then Andrew goes, "Make a choice? Fuck you, you son of a bitch," and hits him again. And he goes, I'm so sorry, but you have to make... And they do this like 3 or 4 times, and Sabrina eventually comes in, and Andrew's just like yelling at everyone and punching Leonard in the head repeatedly. And I'm kind of like, all right, I get it. I get the emotion of everyone in the room now, and like, I get it. Let's go to the next part. I get it.
So they watch the TV to see.
So what was she? She was she Pestilence? I hope she was Pestilence, or else this is not going to make any sense.
I don't think Pestilence is one of the original ones.
Yeah, was she Pestilence?
No, I don't think Pestilence is one of the original Horsemen.
Oh my god!
I think
so she's the Oli of the Horsemen, like one of the originals, but no one wants to remember that. Death, famine, war, and conquest. Shit, you're right.
Yeah.
Wait,
yeah.
war and conquest? I feel like you're doubling up.
They're different. No, they're different.
Okay, so... But the first guy was definitely war.
First guy was war.
Okay, and something non-war happened. Alright. What was she? Was she... Since Pestilence didn't exist, I guess she has to be famine or conquest, right?
I think I thought Leonard was conquest.
I thought Leonard was death.
No, the black one's death.
I thought the Death rode in on a pale horse.
You're right. Death rides in on a pale horse. Okay. No, yeah, you're right, because black is famine.
Who was black? Was it Adrienne?
I think it was one of the women, yeah.
So, well, I mean, it has to be, right? All right. So Paul Tremblay definitely knows that the Pestilence, not one of the original ones.
No, I don't think he cares.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess because when war died, it just caused some earthquakes, so...
Yeah, so anyway, bird flu. That's this one. They turn on the news.
Yeah, I wonder if Paul Tremblay, much like friend of the show and victim of my extortion, John Bierce, was like, oh, that's weird, I wrote about this recently when COVID was breaking out.
I bet there were a lot of people.
Yeah.
There was a Ghost album that was about the Black Plague that came out in 2018, I think. Yeah, prequel.
I wore a shirt that I got from Christmas that was the Black Death tour. Like it was a band, except, it was the Black Death. And I was like, oh, this will be funny. And then I started researching the bubonic plague, and then it happened. So, yeah, it was weird.
Yeah. Anyway, this bird flu thing. So they're watching a pre-recorded show documenting an outbreak of bird flu on chicken farms.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of birds that needed to be destroyed as a result of this. And so Leonard/Jerry turns to Andrew and says, "You see that? It didn't count." And Andrew is like, "This was literally shot days ago."
And he could have also mentioned, like, well, I killed Adrian before I killed Wen, so I guess we broke the seal first, so it counted, asshole. But yeah, you're right. Fine. It did happen days ago.
Yeah. And so they're like, yeah, so they're actually getting less credible as time goes on. Like, so the whole killing Wen thing, it also kind of kills the plot. 'Cause like, what? They're less motivated than ever to care about the world ending.
Yeah.
Because it'll never be saved for them.
Right?
And
hey, God, we'll save the world if you bring my daughter back to life, you fuck.
So and then after the little girl dies and the two men are destroyed emotionally, Leonard is like, look at this pre-recorded documentary on the bird flu outbreak. And then the Seinfeld music plays. Because, like, what was that supposed to do? What? Of course, they're... Now, so then Eric starts seeing more shit.
Yeah.
That's where it sort of cuts in. So then they cut in. There's another thing here where to the reader, to confuse you about whether or not this is happening. I think it's supposed to be like the low moment in like, they are more convinced than ever that they're not going to sacrifice anything. So now you, the reader, need to know that actually the world might end if they don't sacrifice anything. So we get two things. We get Eric's visions, which make Eric start to believe that what they're saying is true. We find out that Eric is religious. He has secretly been going to... He's a secret Catholic. He secretly goes to church. He wanted to share that with Wen, but Andrew talked him out of it. Which, again, it just makes me like Andrew less. He's like, I teach college courses on religion, and I also look down on the people who practice it. And it's like, and one of them is my husband.
Got him.
And it's like, oh, Eric, like, or Andrew, like, you're kind of the worst.
Likeable. Yeah. Can we?
Like Eric
can I
didn't
sacrifice you, Andrew? I'm okay.
Yeah,
with
like
it.
Eric didn't want the gun. Eric goes to church. Andrew's like, I need a gun because I am going to never be that victim again. I think religion is stupid. We're not going to raise Wen with a religion. And Eric rightly acknowledges that, you know, if you don't raise somebody with a religion, they're highly unlikely to ever choose any religion as an adult because they're all silly. And so, you know, like you're kind of a steamroller, Andrew. Like I get why you're this way, but like you're kind of a steamroller. That's all I can say. Is like people are not necessarily okay with the decisions you force upon them, and you don't seem to notice or care. And what would have been neat for like a book is if the sacrifice was somehow thematic.
Nah.
Because like,
you
so
pull
with the
out a
binding
gat, blat, blat, blat.
like with the Binding of Isaac story, it's like, okay, we want a child, but you know, my wife's super old, and so like, okay, God gives you a child, and then you have the child, and then you got the thing you wanted, and God's like, okay, it's mine, kill it, because it's mine. You gotta do what I say, right? And then you do it because like it's true. It is God's. You know, that is the gift He gave you. And
no, that's called an ungifter.
Yeah, well, He's God. He can do that. So you get him up on the thing, and God's like, "Nah, kidding, bro."
Psych.
Psych. Can't believe you were gonna do that. This is gonna be so awkward from now on. You guys are gonna be telling this story every Christmas. You don't know what that is yet. Shit. You know, I thought it was going to have something. Their sacrifice was going to be somehow personal. They have a marital problem. Like going through this experience, teach them something about themselves. Because if you're going to have so many like character moments, you're going to make me learn to live with and love these characters as much as Paul Tremblay is obviously trying to do. Then what they're going through should in some way tie into who they are. It doesn't really. In any way. So then we get another section from Sabrina's perspective. And this is another thing Paul Tremblay likes to do where he takes like a completely unrelated natural disaster
Yeah.
and he ties it into his story poetically. But like this one, so like in Head Full of Ghosts, it was the Great Boston Molassacre, which is a terrible name
Yeah.
for an event in which so many people died in
Yeah,
molasses.
Kind of, you know.
But
maybe they
also,
shouldn't have called it that.
How could you call it anything else?
Right.
I would, if it was not called the Molassacre, I would be sitting here going, why not? Anyway, this time he talks about a dam that broke, and it's like, I'm from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. We know that story. So I was not swayed. It also had nothing to fucking do with anything. Like this lady walks out and she's a horseman. She's like, I was called by the voice of God to walk out into the woods. And I walked out into the woods and then I realized I was standing next to the very dam that 100 years ago on this day broke and washed away 400 of the inhabitants of the valley. And that's when I knew I had to break into your cabin and ask you to... I'm on a tangent.
Perfect.
I understand.
Done.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I guess I'm going to kill my husband now after my daughter died.
So Sabrina decides, you know what?
I think I heard my wife just go woohoo outside.
So Sabrina decides, you know what? I don't like this God fellow. Even if he is calling me to do this, I believe he's calling me to do this. But you know what? Don't care for it. I don't want to. I'm going to help you guys escape.
Oh, I trust
And then-
you. Wait, no, I don't. Let's tie you up.
And then Leonard's like, no, you can't do that.
And then she's
'Cause-
like, counterpoint, and fucking brains him.
Now she does brain him because it's his time.
Yeah.
Because it's time for and then they got to turn on the TV. And what's the third thing that happened?
Planes just start falling out of the sky.
Yep,
That
7
was
planes
when I was like,
crashed.
Okay, well, that's different.
Yeah.
And Andrew is like, that could happen to anyone. And Eric's like, oh, okay, that's why we're always, like, afraid that planes are just gonna, like, fall on us, right? We're always ducking and covering from the planes falling from the sky.
Yeah, but like at the same time, so if you're asking me to believe that there was a conspiracy, that there was some kind of like cyber attack or sabotage that caused a bunch of planes to fall out of the sky, I'm with you. That's a hell of a coincidence. I do not believe they just crashed. Something weird about that. 100%. If you're like, Ben, 7 planes just fell out of the sky. I need you to murder your family. I'm like, well, now hold on. I don't necessarily see the correlation there. Have they grounded the planes? Like no more planes are in the... Okay, well, let's just wait and see what happens then. Like I think even the people in the planes at risk of falling would be like, yeah, no, why would you... Yeah, don't kill your family. Like, it's not going to stop the plane from crashing. That's insane. And it's just like, you know what would make more sense?
Is if...
Meteors.
Okay, I was like, yeah, as if that didn't happen, yeah.
I'd be like, there's a meteor or an asteroid, or I don't know what the difference is, truth be told, enters the atmosphere and it breaks up and it rains down over a major city, destroying several buildings, taking out a bunch of people, and it's like, whoa, fuck.
That meteor could have happened to anyone, Ben.
It could, but that sort of thing is often described as an act of God. Either a bunch of planes fell out of the sky because of a cyber attack, or God decided to take out a bunch of planes, or God cyber attacked these planes.
What kind of cyber warfare division does God have?
The best. Have you ever met Norton Antivirus? No. Okay, so yeah, so Sabrina's like, I'm gonna help you escape. We have Redmond's truck. It's down the trail. We hid the keys under this rock. You're not gonna be able to find the rock without me. There's a lot of rocks in the woods. So they go and they do that. And her last thing,
No, don't glaze over the part where they're like, let's search Redmond's pockets for a key. I need you to check his pockets. All right, now unturn all the pockets. Okay, well, they're not in the front pocket, and they're not in the other front pocket, just like you said, but I bet he probably has the key in his other pockets because he's a wannabe redneck. He's not going to give up his truck keys, so I need you to roll him over. I need you to turn out his pockets, and okay, you can't turn out his pockets. Can you pat his pockets? I need to hear a jingle or not a jingle. And it's like, can you just please, can we just go? Like...
Well, now, he said he'd been to prison, so I'm going to need you to pull down his pants and check for a plastic bag he shoved up his anus.
Yep, there you go. Get his prison wallet. Well, he shat himself, if you recall, so he's probably...
yeah, you might want to wear some gloves.
He probably voided, or he probably got that baggie out of him. Boom, boom,
Yeah, so-
do 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 do.
So... This truly is the Seinfeld of horror. So they walk down the trail. The next plague is supposed to be, or not plague, I don't know what you call it, the disaster, the next apocalypse
It's
thing.
the end of the fucking world.
Is supposed to be like the entire world is consumed by darkness. And wouldn't you know it, as they're walking down the trail, it's getting pretty dark.
Yeah, but she's not dead yet, so...
And then she finds the thing, the rock, and she finds the keys, but you know what else is in there? A fucking gun. How did that get in there? Who put that in there? Was it God? Did God hide a gun in there?
Heat. Maybe God has the requisite gun certifications in that state to be able to pack heat.
He is all-knowing and all-powerful.
Can he make a gun that he cannot lift?
Can you make a gun so powerful that he himself cannot dodge the bullet? I don't know. Yeah, you microwave a burrito so hot that he himself cannot eat it.
All right. So
obviously
she finds the gun and she's like, "Don't worry, I'm not going to shoot myself." And the book ends. The end.
And she pulls on her ritualistic windsock, and she's like, "Guys, there's still time, but you got to do it now." And she puts the gun under her chin, but she's also like, she's fighting back against the God influence. So like, God's got the right arm, but she's got the left arm, and she's like trying to like pull the gun away, and bam. And so she's dead now, and now it's getting darker and darker. Remember when we read good books? Like, I thought this would be good. I really thought this would be good. I was like, Paul Tremblay, Head Full of Ghosts. That was a really good book. I thought... So you know how many people listen to this podcast and were like, they listened to our episode on Head Full of Ghosts and they were like, I'm going to read that because that sounded really good. And I was like, yeah, that's what this is about, man. Like, I was still young. That was season 1. I was like,
season 1. That was the good old days.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, people are going to want to read these books that we talk about. And then we just kept on talking, didn't we?
We should have retired, Ben.
We should have retired. Yeah. So it's getting darker and Eric is like, okay, I think I gotta make the sacrifice. And he picks up the gun. And Andrew's like, you're not sacrificing yourself. You want to sacrifice anybody, you're sacrificing me. Isn't that the real sacrifice? Had to have to be left here alone.
Done.
But he doesn't. And they decide. The book ends on a poetic note that whatever they face, they shall face it together.
Woo-hoo to all the husband killing, says my wife.
And they fade to black. And it's unclear if the world was ending or if it was just a thunderstorm.
Perfect.
Yeah, so, okay. That ending sucks.
What?
That is a book-ruining ending. The entire book, for me. I just needed an answer. If you're going to make me sit through hours and hours and hours and hours of tension building, this isn't a short story. This isn't 40 pages and we're done. This is a novel. This takes 7 to 10 hours to read. It demands a lot of your time. And when you spend all of that time building tension, which he does, and he does it quite well, to end without paying off the tension sucks. It just sucks. Like, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the ending?
What, you didn't like that amazing ending? You didn't like the fact that maybe it was just a thunderstorm?
I don't mind an ambiguous ending. But in this case, the entire point of the story, everything rides on was it real or not.
Yeah.
And there's meaning in either case.
And there should be, if you believe it's real, turn to page 310. If you think that it wasn't real, you turn to page 317. And...
You know my problem, Nate, is by not having an ending, he might as well have done that.
You get to pick your own ending.
I think that's why I don't like it. Because you said it was padded, and a lot of people said, like, this is a padded short story. I really don't think it's a padded short story. I think it's a novel from the ground up. I think it was intended to be the end of the world. And I think in my opinion, the end is Paul Tremblay saying, fuck you to that kind of Old Testament God. The kind of God that would create beings to suffer and put them through these capricious choices. Screw you. He doesn't care. He thinks the right choice is for it to end if it has to be like that. But he won't say it. He's terrified to say it. And so he just implies and then leaves himself plausible deniability. He had a much less ambiguous ending with Head Full of Ghosts. There's some mysteries at the end, but like, even if the sky had cleared and the world hadn't ended, we never would have known, was it a Binding of Isaac situation? Was simply being willing to make the sacrifice enough? And God was like, okay. There are ways to leave it ambiguous that aren't this. This is just a failure to take a stance. He raises a lot of questions. He heavily implies a lot of disdain for that kind of Old Testament God and the kind of people who really like that sort of thing.
Yeah. You needed more Jesus.
I don't know. Like, I just thought, like, this time you had to say something. Like, in Head Full of Ghosts, he did say something, I feel.
Yeah. Boy, wouldn't this suck, am I right?
No, I think in Head Full of Ghosts, he heavily pinned the blame on the father and the priest and the reality show. All the people who encouraged it. And the ambiguous thing was kind of, like, how reliable is... I forget the little girl's name. Was it like Mary or something?
Yeah, yes. Mary and... yes. Yes. Who was the one with the bad blogs? I'm glad we didn't do that again.
You didn't want to see, like, Wen's grasshopper journal between each chapter?
Yeah, that would have been... just...
You know, George R. R. Martin famously said he started writing Game of Thrones by making up stories about his pet turtles. Could have been a game of grasshoppers. Could be a book within a book.
Did
Yeah,
he really
kind of.
say that?
Yeah. Yeah, when he was a kid, he had a bunch of, like, dollar store turtles that kept dying, and he kept them in, like, a castle-style terrarium.
And he was like, how are you going to tax everyone? What's your tax policy?
He demanded to know Aragorn's tax policy. Did Aragorn kill the baby orcs? I don't know. What do you think he should have taken a stance? Do you think the ambiguous ending is warranted?
I think
what would you have needed?
I think if it were ambiguous, they definitely should have made it more ambiguous as to whether they were crazy people or this was divine intervention.
So you're fairly certain it's divine intervention? Pretty
sure. When planes start falling from the sky randomly, I kind of go, that's weird. Planes.
So the planes would you say the planes were the main thing that convinced you?
Yeah, that and the fact that you're right. We do get from their perspective they are going into fugue states.
Yeah, I think for me, it was the Horseman perspective that really sealed it. There was something interesting in the acknowledgments, which I know you never read that section because you never read one more word than what you have to.
God damn right.
He mentioned in the acknowledgments that there was an editor or a beta reader that saved him from making a big mistake. And I kind of wondered if there was a version...
Taking a stance?
Yeah. I kind of wondered if there's a version of this book where it is clear what was happening. And if somebody was like, step back from that. Like, I understand why you want to leave it ambiguous. I understand if you want to have a conversation about, if you want the reader to have a conversation like we're having now. You want people to debate this. But if you want people to debate it, you don't do a good enough job of making the arguments. Because essentially the book comes down to faith versus doubt. The Horseman representing faith, the family representing doubt. And then within the family, you have Eric representing faith, Andrew representing doubt.
They definitely should have debated this more as well. And one of them should have also brought up your point with the, why would I go ahead and save the world if we're just going to global warm it to death anyway?
I guess maybe that's not evergreen content. Maybe he's planning for, this book to be read in 100 years when presumably we've solved global warming.
Oh, I hope so.
Obviously, Eric was supposed to represent faith. He has religion. And Andrew was supposed to represent doubt. But they never even have the conversation amongst themselves. Not until the very end, and even then it's very weak. Because Andrew is entirely dismissive of everything Eric thinks and believes until the bitter end. Andrew does not think for 1 second Eric is seeing any of this stuff for real. He's somewhat convinced by the planes falling out of the sky. But even then, I think Andrew is like, you know what? Never. I will never do it. Because even if it's true, I don't care about the world. And so that's another facet of it where you would say there's the selfish versus the altruistic of like Eric may see the beauty in the world. Andrew has been scarred by the world. Andrew has been attacked just for, being what he was born as, what God made him. And he has had to endure that humiliation and that vulnerability, and he is fighting back against it. There's themes. Like, I can totally see how Paul Tremblay wanted to do a lot with this. It's also a very short book. It's barely a novel, which is why I think a lot of people say it's padded. But I just feel like this one, it needed more. It needed more to connect the characters to the plot, but I get this vibe I can't shake that Paul Tremblay hates religion so much that he just can't. He just can't entertain it.
Then why bother?
Kind of my thought. I can certainly see why M. Night Shyamalan was attracted to the story, though, because that is exactly the kind of bullshit ending that he loves.
Maybe it should be like they were secretly in an old village in the middle of Oregon in modern day times. Yeah?
No.
Yeah?
They were secretly on a soundstage filming a Truman Show style thing called Who Wants to Be a Family Killer? Who Wants to Be a Family Annihilator?
Perfect.
That's America's Next Top Show. And if you don't annihilate your family, you get $1 million. I guess it depends on which way the network thinks people would lean. What's the more unlikely scenario? I don't know, Nate. I gave my best. I gave my best Bookman analysis here. You're gonna have to take it home.
All right. My thought was I cared about it a whole lot less after you spoiled it. There was no tension.
Okay, now you keep saying I spoiled it, but like we usually have a few discussions before we record the podcast, and like you didn't finish this until 20 minutes before we started recording.
To be fair, I didn't care to, because you ruined it.
I ruined it yesterday.
Yeah. That was enough, Ben. That was enough.
You should have been further along. You're like, oh yeah, no, I'm pretty close to being done. I think Redmond's about to die.
There's also a lot of stuff where it's like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get it. Like, oh my god, let's move on. Or there's a flashback at a really inopportune moment where it's like, my god, Leonard is struggling with Andrew over this gun. Oh my god, what's gonna happen? And then it's like, now we cut to when my dad once took me to show me this gun safe and said that I'm not allowed to come into the bedroom anymore, and I'm not.
It was so funny.
I'm like, oh my god,
it was so funny.
This is the worst moment to do this.
When I saw no, it's not the worst moment to do that, because when I saw that the flashback was when being told about gun safety, I was like, oh shit, they're gonna shoot when. It was, yeah. I just, golly,
All right, are we done, Ben? Are we gonna abruptly? You choose your own adventure, guys. If you're listening to this, if you want to listen to the outro, go ahead and just keep listening to this. If you don't want to listen to the outro, you turn off the podcast.
If you want to fade to black and wonder if the outro was just a thunderstorm, just shut it off now.
All right, Ben, bring your home.
Nate'll blow his brains out next to a tree.
So, what are we? Where can you find us, Ben? And who
you
are
find
our
us on
patrons?
Twitter? Yeah, I get everything in its time, my friend. Everything in its time. So you can find us at Twitter at WABpod, blog.wordsaboutbooks.ninja, where I post reviews that are less jokey. We have an Instagram at Words About Books Podcast. You can email us at wordsaboutbookspod@gmail.com. We also have a Discord. Link should be wherever you found this podcast. Patrons. We have a Patreon. Patreon is patreon.com/WABpod. Got it. First try. And we have some of those who contribute at a tier that is quite frankly ridiculous. But they do that for the pleasure of hearing me say their name at the end of the podcast. Those names are Brad, a.k.a. Isekai Sensei, Sama of an aforementioned anime podcast, but you can find his website at animepodcasterreincarnation.com. James, who is probably going to have a lot to say about this episode and was mentioned frequently at the beginning of it. James has a movie review blog. James watches every movie and he reviews them. Sometimes cereals, sometimes sodas. Sometimes you two just go to like a convenience store and buy a bunch of junk and review it. I don't know what happens. But that is the If You Want the Gravy blog. Google that. Better have biscuits. We have Spooky Shy making TikToks on TikTok at Shy with a Y, spelled C-H-Y. We have, last but not least, John Bierce, actual author, has books called Mage Errant. It is a series. We have talked about it on the podcast. We will talk about it again on the podcast. He has been on the podcast. He also wrote The Rack. He also has a new book coming out. I'm not sure if it came out yet or not. I got to check on that. He also has a Patreon where you can check out some of his short stories, vote on which one he posts. It's a good deal. Oh no, the world's ending.
Quick, shoot yourself in the face.
No, but I'd rather shoot you.
No. That's the ultimate sacrifice is to shoot yourself.
No, I think the ultimate sacrifice. No, I think it's got to be you.
I have an idea. Let's just spin the gun in a circle and then shoot him.
And then we just kiss whoever it lands on. I think that's what God wants. Okay, deal.